Okay, so this particular activity is all about trying to learn some of the basics of Illustrator by doing a vectorization of an insect. So there's a number of different tools that we're going to be using. Specifically, we're going to be using the pen tool, the Pathfinder tool, the gradient mesh tool, and the eyedropper tool. So we're going to use those 4 tools, and it's going to get us a really nice high quality vector illustration of a bug. So I'm going to be running you through how to use all 4 of those tools in this particular tutorial. Just enough to touch on, and then I'm going to be able to leave you to expand and build upon that as you see fit. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be going onto Pinterest and just look up colorful bug, or you could look up colorful butterfly, whatever you want, as long as it's some sort of insect. And what you're going to be looking for is a nice simple photo of a bug, and a nice simple bug. You don't want to overextend yourself with this particular task. Something like this has all of these complex textures, which is probably just a bit too much for this particular task unless you really wanted to challenge yourself. So just keep scrolling down. Something like that might be all right, although you've got some sort of splotches there. So keep scrolling down, ideally on a white background. Something like that might be a good challenge, or that one. So just keep going until you've found something that you really like. And then once you've found it, just open it up, check that the quality's there, and then just copy the image. So right click and copy onto it. So I'm going to go onto my little bug now. So we start by opening up Illustrator. We'll go create new. You want to go A4, so 210 by 297 millimeters. CMYK color, generally try and default to that, because if you can always go from CMYK to RGB quite easily without any loss. But if you try to go from RGB to CMYK, all of a sudden your color's going to look really flat, and you're going to wish you had have started with CMYK, which is of course the print color profile, so which I'm not going to go into in too much detail here. So CMYK, worry about your raster effects, that's all pretty good. Portrait mode, so let's go create. Okay, so we've created our new page. We've got a nice little white page here, and what I've done is I've just held the space bar to drag my page across to the right here, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit Control V, and this is the image that I've chosen. So I've got this little yellow bug. See how I've picked one that's on a nice white background. It's nice and simple. It's not too complex, which is just enough to test our skills with these 4 tools, the pen tool, the Pathfinder, the gradient mesh, and the eyedropper, but not so advanced that we're going to get bogged down on the details. So really important that you do that. So first things first is I'm on this, which is my selection tool. I'm going to hold the Alt button and drag a second copy of this bug onto my page. So now what I've got is I've got this one, which I'll be tracing with the pen tool, and I've got my little reference image here. So what we're going to do now is another keyboard shortcut that you're going to want to learn is Control Alt, and then you just zoom in using your mouse scroller. So you're holding Control Alt, you can zoom in and out rather than having to go all the way to the magnifying glass to zoom in and out, which is going to get really tiresome, especially if you're using the pen tool. Control Alt, zoom in and out. So first things first is I'm going to get my pen tool. We want to trace around the entire perimeter of the bug. So we're going to hit the P button, which is the keyboard shortcut. I'm a big advocate for keyboard shortcuts rather than using the icons. Reason being is you're always going to be doing something with the mouse, and the last thing you want to be doing is clicking out of one thing so you can click on another thing. So that's where the keyboard shortcuts come in really handy. So I'm going to zoom right in as close as I can and just start tracing. So with the Bezier, I can show you some tutorials about how to use the Bezier, so I'm not going to go into that in great detail at the moment. But basically you'll start at this little corner point. You'll find a nice corner point to start with. You'll click at the edge of a curve and then just drag while you're holding the click button. And the idea is you want to try to do it in as fewer clicks as possible. The last thing you want to be doing is just doing these straight lines. See how I'm like clicking here and I get these jaggedy straight lines. Control-Zing that. You want smooth lines because that's the point of vector, is it gives you these beautiful smooth lines and you can zoom in forever and it's going to be this beautiful sharp quality print or reproduction. So as I said, I'm going over here, you click to the points, I'm creating this little radius. Now because that comes to a point, I hover over that till I get this little V shape, click on that, and that tells it to not create a curve on the outer path. So continuing, so I'm just going to keep going over here and I'm going to fast forward this bit now. Now I'm going to stop there for a second. One of the mistakes I've made is it's filling as it goes. So that means when it starts folding around on itself, see how it's hiding the details? So something, and that I get unstuck on that all the time myself. So it's probably something that you'll probably get stuck on as well. So just click the little reversey there. And what that does is it just turns it into an outline instead of a fill. So that way I can see the things, see the shapes underneath that I'm overlapping. So I'm going to go back into fast mode now and we'll get this thing done before we move to the next stage. Now I'm going to stop there again. So what I'm doing is I'm using this space bar. So see how I'm zoomed in so much? You've got to be zoomed in because you've got to be able to see those details. But you'll just hold the space bar. It'll convert your little cursor to a hand, and you can click and drag as you move around the page. So make sure you keep that in mind. Alright, so I'm nearing completion now. So we're just going to round this off and then see how when I get over the finish point, a little O appears in the bottom right hand of my cursor next to the pen. Click on that and all of a sudden you've got this closed shape. So I'm going to Control Alt, scroll back. And now if I flick that, I can see I've got this really nice outline of my bug. So this is when we get into the Pathfinder tool. As you can see, I've got this outline, but it's missing the little hollowed out areas here. So we're going to have to draw them now. I'll quickly draw them and then we use our Pathfinder tool to cut them out. So I'm going to be ignoring in this point these little hairs on his legs. So we, just for the sake of simplifying the tutorial, the hairs are a whole nother kettle of fish. And we're going to line that up, then P back to the pen tool. Okay, so as you can see, I've skipped a couple of things here and I've created these as different colors. So we've got our little inside shape here and our inside shape here. So first and foremost, we need to join these two together. So we're going to use the Pathfinder tool and we're going to click the Unite button. So what that does is it basically tells Illustrator that both of these shapes, let's put them in the same, let's count them as one shape, if that makes sense. So what we've done there is now if I click away and I select these, it's seeing them as one shape. So it's kind of like the group tool, but instead of Illustrator seeing it as two shapes that are grouped together, Illustrator sees it as just one single shape. So now we're going to select the back shape. So now I've got this whole salmon pink shape and I've also got the inside shape selected, and I'm going to turn them into a compound path. Don't necessarily need to know what that means, but we're going to hit the Control 8 button, and what that does is it means that it's all this one shape now. And it's this, well, we'll call it a compound path. So now we have this really nice silhouette. See if I drag that out, we've got this beautiful bug shape and we can zoom in forever and we get these really nice sharp lines, as opposed to the raster photo that we've built it off, which gets really pixelated as you zoom in. which is really, really bad for if you're wanting to do some large format printing. So you've done this bug, say, as a logo. Someone asks you to put it on the side of a car, and all of a sudden you've done it in Photoshop. So you try to put it on the side of a car, you blow it up really huge, and you end up with this really blocky image. Something like this, as I mentioned, you can put it on the side of a billboard at 50 feet long, and it's still going to have these beautiful smooth lines. So that's one of the big benefits, and that's why I genuinely do not want people trying to do any logo design or anything in Photoshop. So yeah, try to avoid that like the plague. Okay, so we've done this outline. We've got this really nice what we'll call a silhouette of the bug to start with. Now it's time to start moving on to these other shapes inside the bug. So we've got this wing here, a wing here, this little middle bit, and a couple of other yellow shapes. So that's all going to start coming together now. So this particular part of the task is going to get us again with the pen tool primarily. We're going to use the path tool, but in a slightly different way. Then we're going to get the gradient mesh tool, which is going to give us these beautiful contoured shapes, which is very different to trying to use the gradient tool. It creates much more sophisticated and realistic results than what the gradient tool can. And then we're going to use the eyedropper tool, which basically means that we're going to be sampling colors exactly from the photo. So we're going to make this as realistic and closely representing the photo as possible. So first step is I need to hit this little switch button, and what that does is it just gives me an outline instead of a fill of our little bug here. So first things first, I'm going to do this left wing here. So you're going to want to start at this at a nice little corner pocket point, drag your mouse across. Now when I get outside the shape, I'm just going to give it a wide berth, because you're going to be using the Pathfinder intersect tool, which is going to make sense in a second, but then joining back up at the edges here. So see how once I've gone outside the perimeter of the bug, I've gone really, really loose, but then making sure that I join back up really tight in. Click to that. Now I'm giving it a wide berth again, joining back up at this join here, joining here, and then a wide berth again. So what that's given me is I now have this wing by itself, and I'll change the color of this so you can see the difference. So I've got this wing here, and then I've got the outline of the bug. So this is where we need to move to the intersect tool inside the Pathfinder function. And we end up with this really nice intersected shape. So see how what it's done is it's cut away everything that's not that wasn't within this initial silhouette. So now we've got these two shapes. We've got the outside layer and we've got this inside wing. So we're going to switch that out here, and this is when we start moving into the gradient mesh tool, which is it's a pretty advanced tool. It takes a lot to get your head around exactly how it works. So you've just got to play around as much as you can, do some shapes, and just try to figure out the system that it creates, that it makes gradients from. And once you do that, you can really start doing some more advanced stuff. So I'm going to zoom out here, and I'll get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. So first thing, we're going to hit the V button, which is going to get us our direct select. We're going to select this little salmon shaped wing here, and then we're going to use the eyedropper tool. So you can go over here, you can click the eyedropper, but I like to use the keyboard shortcuts, so it's much easier to keep going with your mouse while you're instead of interrupting your workflow. So I'm going to select the darkest yellow spot to work from here. So that's kind of down at the base of this wing. It's this sort of really kind of deep mustardy yellow. So we've got that, we've created the wing at this really dark spot. Now we need to start using the gradient mesh tool. So you can hit the U button. So gradient mesh tool's over here. You can hit the U button as a keyboard shortcut. I recommend you get used to doing that because particularly when you're working on it, you've just got to use these keyboard shortcuts as much as possible to streamline your workflow is the word that Illustrator would use. So I'm going to start by, we've got this highlight. So let's click up the top where this highlight would start and see what it's done. It's created some contour lines automatically based on the shape that you've done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the I button, which is the Eyedropper Tool, and I'm going to say I want this to be this lighter yellow. So as you can see already it's got this as the lightest yellow, and then it fades out really liberally all the way to the edges, which are that darker color. And then I'm going to go back to the gradient mesh tool by hitting the U button. I'm going to click here, eyedropper, to make it look like that. Back to the U button. So now I'm switching between the U and the I, so the mesh and the eyedropper. I'm going to zoom in here. So make sure that you're clicking on this same contour line. If you click just out of it, see how it creates this really awkward double line which gives you these sharp edges which aren't necessarily what you want. So try to always keep it clicking along the same contour line. So I'll just click there and zooming out again, hit the eyedropper tool, got that. And now I can kind of click on these edges here. And again, just eyedropping to this sort of lighter lemon color on the edge. So you can see how that's starting to form this really nice gradient shape. And again, as opposed to this, which is really blocky when I zoom in, this gradient mesh we've created is these beautiful smooth colors that blend perfectly regardless of how much you zoom in. So that's one of the big benefits there. So I'm going to keep on going with this, and then we're going to hit the fast forward button, and I'm going to replicate this with the other wing. I'm going to do it a bit with that. I'm going to go over here, so I'm going to finish off this. So now with this one we can create, so that's created this contour line here. So see how there's this kind of shape of yellow. Now you can kind of do that by your eye as much as possible, and it really depends how advanced you want to get. Generally try to keep it as simple as you can. You don't want to be ending up with 50 million layers like this, and because all of a sudden it becomes a bit unwieldy and a bit hard to use, unless you really want to get a high degree of detail. I would recommend just trying to keep it reasonably at something like this amount of grid lines. If you're getting heaps and heaps of grid lines, you might want to consider a different method for creating a vector illustration, which I'm happy to run you through if you really wanted this hyper realistic replicating all of these dimples in here. We can definitely walk through that, but it might not be using the gradient mesh tool. So I'm going to keep going here. So we've got this slightly yellow highlight on the inside. So I'm going to click away. So all of a sudden we've got this kind of rounded look. We've got this sort of separate white area here. So if we create that eyedropper and then even another one in here, I'm going to eyedropper all of these just to kind of break that up a little bit. Doesn't look super good, not incredibly happy with that. So what you can do is you can now drag these across, drag them out. Bit fiddly here, so I don't think I've done that as well as I would have liked to. But so this is just using the A button. So we got this direct selection tool, so you can actually just move your little grid lines around as you go here, and you can fold that up. So these create little Bezier curves. So you can, again, like a lot of what I'm doing here is just sort of just fiddling around and having a bit of a play with how it all works. Because it's such a fancy tool and it does so much, you really just need to spend time getting used to it, because it can take a lot of practice to get to a really nice stage there. So look, that's pretty good. I'm not 100% happy with it. I'd probably want to spend maybe another sort of 5-10 minutes just getting that to look a lot better. So zoom out there and feel like that's looking all right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the fast forward button. I'm going to go around and do the other wing and all of this, and then we're going to do a bit of an overview of what we've achieved. So fast forwarding now. Alrighty, so we've gone through that. So that was about 2 minutes. Don't put pressure on yourself to do it that quickly. Yeah, make sure you take it slowly and really take the time to familiarize yourself with it, and you will get faster and faster. Yeah, don't worry if it takes you half an hour to figure it out. The keyboard shortcuts can take forever as well, flicking between U and I and P. And then obviously your full selection, your direct selection. So lots and lots of figuring out. So you can hit your A button and this gives you these. You can see how I'm slightly tweaking the grid there. So take your time, spend some time on it, and figure it out over a long span of time. And then as you do it more and more, you'll get faster and faster, and then eventually you'll be able to do something like this in 5-10 minutes flat. So I've got the little outside shape now, so this is pretty well where we've landed. So we've got, I'm going to eyedropper that to this sort of dark brown shape inside here. And what we can do now is we can actually just delete this image behind. And you can see we've created a really strong likeness, except in vector. So this is something that's going to look really, really sharp on any design that we like. And it's perfectly scalable and sizable. So that's where we've got to. If you have finished that and you're pretty happy with what you've learned from that, you can extend yourself by looking to create these details which occur in here. So at the moment this is just a silhouette. We can create these sort of reddish details, and if you really wanted to, you could create these details here. So you could actually spend hours more on this, making it super photorealistic. You could feed in the dimples. So if you wanted to challenge yourself, by all means, have a go at that. I'll quickly run through how I would go about that. So if we drag this a bit closer so that we've got this visual reference. So I'm going to go with the pen tool. So the important thing is that you always want, because I'm going to be using the gradient mesh again, you always want it to fade into the same color as the color that it's sitting on. Otherwise it kind of looks, it gives you this really sharp color tone change, which just doesn't look quite right. So I'm going to hit the U button, go into the gradient mesh here, I button, and I'm going to select this sort of inner arm or inner whatever that bit of the insect is, and what that does is it just sort of creates a fade there. So I can go to the U, I can see how there's a bit of a sort of a sharp highlight here, so I could create two of these really close together. Now, wouldn't stress too much if you don't know exactly how I've managed that sort of sharp fade, but what you can do is just keep experimenting on your own, and you'll be able to sort of learn exactly how I did what I did just then. So you could go so far as to start feeding in these details and add them to every single bit. you really want, you could start drawing in some of these highlights. So just with your pen tool here, you can create a highlight like that. So if you really wanted to challenge yourself, you can get this thing looking absolutely photorealistic over a long enough time span. So have a go at that. Let me know what you think. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what you come up with.